So we've got here with us in the room, we've got myself, John Camrick, we've got Carol Dunn, Doug Cohen, Kirk Souther, Emily Tracy, Kathy Worthington, Andrea Stein, Steve Andrews, and Ryan Stevens. And I understand right now we have online, unless I'm missing somebody, we've got John Behill, Floyd Wolf, Vance Crocker, and Melinda Barrett. And so we're here to hear, this morning, we're going to hear from Black Hills. And so with that, I'll just turn it over to you, Vance, or whoever you'd like to take the lead.
All right, I can go ahead and jump in. First off, up until late last week, I was planning on being there in person. However, through contract tracing at work, I found out that I was actually had a hour-and-a-half meeting one-on-one with an individual that tested positive for COVID. So according to our protocol, I need to essentially quarantine. So this is the best I could do. So again, I apologize for sorry for not being there in person. Got the presentation in front of you. And John, does everybody have hard copies, or can everybody see the presentation okay?
Yes and yes.
All right, well, very, very good. Well, my name is Vance Crocker. I'm Vice President of our operations for our gas and electric utilities here in Colorado. I have the overall financial operational responsibilities for both, again, both gas and electric. I've been in the utility business for 32 years. Started off as an engineer right out of college, and meandered my way through all kinds of things within the utility and energy business, from renewables to operations, engineering, planning, power plant siting, things like that. Most recently, I've served as what we call our state leader, responsible for our Kansas gas operations in Kansas, and then back up in the Black Hills region, leading the utility up there. And then in late 2017, I came down here to Colorado to have the privilege to serve as the leader here in Colorado. So John, why don't you just jump to the agenda, if you would, please. So these are some of the things we'd like to talk about today, and hopefully there'll be questions as we go through. We'll be happy to answer any questions with the team that we have on board. So let's just start off with a safety discussion, if you would allow me. One of the things that Black Hills Energy is proud of is our focus on safety. And when we think about safety, we think about our family safety, getting our employees home to their families safe every single day, without exception. And then also customer safety, making sure that our customers are safe in everything that we do, and making sure that we're providing a system that provides safety to our customers. And one of the things that we do, and I'll say it's just one of the small things that we do, is every time we have a meeting of 2 or more people, we start off with a safety topic or discussion. So if you're ever in a meeting with Black Hills Energy folks and they're not starting off with a safety topic, I want to know about it. Kind of little fun, but it is deadly serious, and it's very, very important for us. So wanted to talk just a little bit about storm preparations. If you go back over the last year and look across the United States, there's been some horrendous storms. Not too long ago, you had that big storm out east, and you saw some of those Virginia motorists being stranded on the highways for nearly a day. We're all familiar with what happened. I think probably saw the news, what happened in Boulder. We have seen what happened last year down in Texas. Again, lack of reliability and safety was life and death. And then most recently, here about 2 weeks ago, just before the Christmas break, some horrendous winds moved through. And in the case of Black Hills Energy, we lost over 25,000 customers. Fortunately, we had been planning for that. We were able to get the power restored within a couple days. But nevertheless, it gives pause to think about, what do we have to do as citizens, as people, as family members to prepare for storms, prepare for outages. Again, whether it's in your vehicle, and you're driving, or whether it's at your home. And again, just being, expected the unexpected, whether it's safety kits in your vehicles or stocking up on supplies at home. We've got good reliability, but things can happen like we saw in Texas, where people can be out for weeks, extended periods of time. So it's always good to prepare. And I'll tie something really in specific here to when you have windstorms or something on your house. If you have an overhead line coming to your house, it's called the home service mast. It's a little round tubular steel tube that goes up just slightly above your roof line. And during wind conditions, that can actually fall down and expose yourself to high voltage electricity. So within your own yard. So something to always be looking at, especially after there's a significant wind. So again, we can do everything as human beings and everything at work. We can do it right, but if we're not getting home safely to our families, in our business, we consider that a failure. So thus the focus on safety. All right. Wanted to just go through a few intros here. I already introduced myself, but I can see on Zoom, we've got Melinda Barrett. She's our regulatory and finance manager. And really what Melinda is she's really my CFO for Black Hills Energy here on the electric side. Been with the company many years, has provided some great support to us. Next is Julie. I don't see Julie on. No, Julie, are you there? Is Julie there? She might not be. Okay, Julie Rodriguez, some of you may have had interactions with her, but she's our senior program manager for community affairs. And then John, who I think most of you know is our senior program manager also for community affairs. And then don't know if Ashley Campbell was joining us right now, but she is our regional manager of community affairs. And then certainly last but not least, Mr. Floyd Wolf. He is my director of operations for all of the Colorado electric operations. So I think between all of us, hopefully we'll be able to answer any questions you might have. All right, I've always considered not only a very important responsibility, but also a privilege to be able to serve our communities and our customers. All of us, have family members, have spouses, friends, things like that. We are all part of the communities that you see up here that we call Black Hills Energy, and we are very proud to be in Colorado. It is our home, just like it is your home as well. And this particular slide shows kind of what I'm overall responsible for here in Colorado. And I won't tick off, all of these items here, but it just kind of gives you a purview of what our area of responsibility is. And again, this is both our gas and electric service. And I would also I would also add that as we, as we look at serving our customers, serving our communities, investing to provide, the safe, reliable energy, we are part of a much larger company, although we have 300,000 customers here in Colorado and serve 119 communities. Black Hills Energy is an 8-state gas and electric utility company that's got 1.3 million customers. So we have an opportunity to serve what we consider really rural America. And as if you see some of these communities up here, you'll note they're very rural, and they're not service territories like Minneapolis or Denver, Colorado, or Colorado Springs. We do go on this slide, John. One thing we do pride ourselves on is we do work again within our communities. Something that's really important for us is economic development, and you're going to see us in those economic development circles and really working on community priorities. And then if you just take an example here, one of the community priorities that has been brought up with Canyon City is the redevelopment of W.N. Clark. I know that might sound relatively simple, but our team spend a fair amount of time working through the regulatory construct, looking at what the communities are really looking for to help, again, support our communities. Sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's just with our, employees and their time giving to nonprofits, and other times it might be like this with property and assets that we have that can support community priorities. Right, and then I probably should say that, when you look at just the electric service territory, Melinda, I think we jumped over 100,000 customers, but this is our published service territory, and again, similar to the gas side, we are very much a rural provider. So we got a lot of infrastructure out there. But I think one thing that you'll see, and John will talk about, is our commitment to safety and reliability, as well as rate stability. You'll see some of that. But when we talk about reliability, I know sometimes it's easy for people just to talk reliability and really not back it up. And you'll see some slides where we've made some pretty significant investments in our infrastructure to improve our reliability. And I'm proud to lead this utility when we can look to see what happened last year with Texas, what's happened in some of the Midwest during that Storm Uri, where Texas was out, but there were rolling blackouts across the Midwest. And certainly you've read about that in California as well. But we are a good system operator. We maintain high reliability, and despite the weather conditions, we're able to continue to have what we call top quartile reliability, which just means that when you look across the United States, we're in the top 25% plus of reliability. All right, speaking of reliability, first off, this is a picture of what we call our Pueblo Airport Generation Station that was built over the last 8 to 10 years. And when we look at Colorado Electric, Black Hills Energy, we are one of Colorado's most forward-looking generation fleets. And why do I say that? First off, we have state-of-the-art generation, as you'll see here, some of the most efficient and reliable generation in the nation. And then I would also, add that here in Colorado, we have one of the cleanest fleets in the state. The reason is years ago, we've essentially eliminated all of our coal. And when you look at our overall generation portfolio, you'll see it's made primarily of natural gas and renewables being wind and solar. And I think one thing that's important to note is we were the first utility to eliminate all of our coal-fired generation and be simply a natural gas and renewable generation fleet. And one thing that you're going to see a lot of Colorado as a whole, I know these numbers have probably changed over the last year, but I think Colorado's in the 40 to 45% coal as far as energy resources. And again, Black Hills Energy is positioned very well for this new clean energy environment. You're going to see a lot of the utilities that have coal are going to need to be shutting those coal plants down, building backup generation like we've built, and adding renewable generation to their fleet. And we are positioned very well because we have already shut our coal plants down. We have great generation that frankly is designed to really support our ability to integrate renewable resources, more cost-effective renewable resources into the system. We don't have any more capacity that we need to build, and we can simply bring those renewables into the system at a lower cost. So we are very positioned for the future. And really this next slide here is just going to show some of the renewables that we have. John, if you could advance that.
Sure, Vance. Before I advance that, I'd maybe just take a quick pause. Does anybody have questions for Vance at this point in time?
Don't see any around the table.
Okay, great. And I do apologize, but because I have minimized the participant screen and I'm driving here, I can't see if anybody's trying to get my attention. So please feel free to yell out.
All right, this again is some of our renewable energy that I previously talked about. There is going to be certainly more renewables to follow in the near future. Probably in the next 10 years, there's going to be a lot more renewables to follow. But as I mentioned, it's important to realize that you see the solar panels here, the wind's not always blowing, and we always say the sun's not always shining, and having that backup generation, that Pueblo Airport generation, is so critical to maintaining the reliability and facilitating our ability to continue to increase low-cost renewables into our system. And at that, I am going to pass the mantle over to John Vigil.
Thanks, Vance. Just maybe a couple more points to make here on this slide. So, you're seeing our renewable energy portfolio as it sits today. We've got about 150 megawatts of wind power. All of that's located here in southeastern Colorado in the Huerfano Valley. And there are 3 separate projects that were completed to provide that energy. And then we have community solar that right now is the component of solar that we have on our system. This picture is from right here in Fremont County. It was the first solar garden here in Fremont County, opened in 2019. And we have a total of 11. We have 5 online right now. We have 11 planned by the second quarter of 2022. And when that's complete, we'll have 10.5 megawatts of solar production from community solar gardens. And the reason that community solar is really important is because it provides an opportunity for everybody to be access renewable energy. And the example that I'll give is that not every rooftop is well suited for solar energy, and not everybody can stomach the upfront cost of putting solar panels on their home. And so what community solar does is allows people to subscribe and not have the additional maintenance of having those panels on their home. And so as an example, we have Fremont County, Public Community College, and Canyon City are all what we call off-takers or subscribers to the solar garden here in Fremont County. So Vance talked a little bit about reliability, and I just want to touch on, you have heard in the past about SAIDI minutes from one of the other presenters. And SAIDI minutes are called System Average Interruption Duration Minutes. It's a way to measure if we spread outages evenly across every single customer in our territory, that's the number of minutes that a single customer would experience during the course of a year. And I do want to say just a couple of things. First is this is normalized data, and what that means is when you have major events like Storm Uri, or you have major events like the windstorm that we had in December, those are taken out. So this is average customer, average day kind of experience. And what you're seeing is data from the U.S. Energy Information Administration, and it's for the last 4 years. And what you can see, that blue line is Black Hills Energy. I've compared us with the other investor-owned utility here in the state, as well as I added Core because you've heard from them, and then Holy Cross because they're provided energy by Guzman. And you can see that we compare very favorably to our peers. Vance talked to our top quartile reliability, but we do a very good job. You'll also notice that this information is from 2020. That's because it takes a while for the U.S. Energy Information Administration to get data. And so I do want to provide you with an updated number. For the year end of 2021, we ended at 65.17 minutes of outage for the year. I just want to say one more thing about that. Sorry about that. The reliability that we experience is really due to two factors. One is Vance talked about the investment that we have made in our system here since we purchased Aquila in 2008. In the last 5 years alone, we strategically invested over $200 million to ensure that we have the kind of reliability that our customers expect. And in addition to that, it's people, the people that serve our customers, the people that live in your community, complete operations to make sure that we proactively address maintenance. In fact, in last year alone in Colorado, we completed 33,000 line inspections and 19,887 pole inspections. And that resulted in remediating 525 hazards and 170 pole replacements. And that's the kind of proactive maintenance that it takes to make sure that we are addressing weaknesses in our system before they become a problem. And I do want to just maybe pause for a second here, because you hear a lot about investment. You've heard from the PUC about the investment that we made in our generation assets, and they recognized that impacted rates. And so I thought I might maybe pause and ask Melinda to just chime in on how we manage those costs, Melinda, when it comes to our customers' experience with their overall bill.
Yeah, thanks, John. Good morning. Melinda Barrett here. I guess the piece that I'd like to impart and share with this team is the capital investments made into the system is really only one side of the story or piece of the puzzle as we manage the business. We are heavily focused on providing stable rates for our customers. And what we have seen and shown in some of our numbers is we're experiencing growth in our territory, all while managing that growth with system investments and the additional or potential incremental O&M costs to serve those customers. So at the forefront of the decisions that we make on behalf of our customers for prudent investments, it's managing and understanding the risks and the opportunities within the system to provide that reliable service. John, anything else you'd like me to add?
No, I don't think so. I just wanted to make sure that we touched on that. Does anyone have questions for Melinda about the investments that we make?
Yes, we've got one here.
Hi, John, Vance and all, and Melinda and all. I'm not quite sure how deep we want to go to a question like this, but because every time an electric company invests in more generation power, for example, those costs are passed on to the customer. So we already have questions, I think, about the rich capacity, maybe we would say, that you have at PAGS. And then you're adding in wind and solar. Over time, I'm sure there will be more wind and solar for all kinds of reasons, including state regulatory reasons. So how do you as a company try to avoid, well, I don't even think that's the right word, but it's just all of those costs get passed along. So customers are paying for all of these investments that it seems might put us beyond the capacity that we need. And as you know, one of the biggest concern in the community here has been cost to customers. The February 2021 study that the PUC released showed Black Hills residential rates, I think, were 34% above the statewide average. You could compute easily that at that point in time, anyway, 47% above XL's rates. So there's this, how do you, from the corporate point of view, balance all of that so that you're not continuing to add those investment costs into customer rates?
Yeah, Emily, that's a great question. And I'm not sure if Vance or Melinda, which of you want to take this, but I think there's kind of twofold answers there. One has to do with how we manage, certain investments that kind of roll on and roll off of the rates as kind of a regular course of business. And then there's a second part of that, which is, the avoided cost of generation capacity. So which of you would like to take that?
I'll take that. I'll take that. That's a great question. And I think most of you were aware, when I came down in 2017, and I came down by choice. There's something drawing me to Southern Colorado, which I absolutely love. But one of the things that I heard loud and clear when I went around and had discussions in all of our service territories were rates. Our rates were certainly were higher than the average. I would also say that when we look at some of the co-ops around us that interconnect directly to our system, kind of that rural provider, we're pretty competitive from that aspect. However, what came across to me is we've got to do everything that we can to provide that reliable service, but also provide that rate stability. And I think you're going to see a slide that John's going to show that has essentially shown the rate stability that we have provided over the years, and that other entities are catching up with us. And I don't, other entities catching up, I always want to be clear that I'm not making excuses, or that I'm not saying we don't have to work on the rate stability side, because we do. And so, as we look at our system and we look at investments in our system, we're also looking at the other side of that and saying, okay, if we don't make these investments in our system, we're going to have high or lower reliability numbers, or worse reliability numbers. And that is going to drive additional operations and maintenance costs to our company, which are ultimately paid for by our customers. One of the things that I think what you're going to see here in the future, and we're already seeing this, is Black Hills Energy did make a pretty significant investment by shutting coal down and building renewables in the future, or by shutting down coal and building the Pueblo Airport generation station. But what that has done is that has allowed us to maintain stable rates and allow us to integrate lower cost renewables in the future. And you're going to see that from a rate stability perspective. So I think that was Emily. We have a very keen eye on what do we need to do to maintain that rate stability. And there was something I wrote down, a key point I wanted to make, and it slipped my mind. Melinda, John, I know I missed something. I was going to write it down when Emily was speaking, and I slipped my mind.
Vance,
So I think one of the questions, go Go ahead, Melinda.
One thought that had popped in my head, similar when Emily was asking a question, was around from excess capacity. And I think one of the pieces that's really important to consider and be mindful of is there's two types of capacity when you think about generation. There's firm capacity and there's intermittent capacity. And as part of reliability from a generation perspective, natural gas generation or our PAGS units are considered firm capacity. And so as we think about that balance and managing our generation portfolio, having the right mix of generation capacity between firm and intermittent is very important to providing that reliability to customers, all while maintaining stable rates.
Yeah, that was what I did want to talk about. I think there was a comment about excess capacity, and I think there's a there was a report that came out within the last year. It's kind of the one of the governing entities for reliability underneath I'll call it the federal government, if you will. It's WEC. And they follow under a lot of acronyms here, but the NERC, which is the North American Energy Reliability Commission. Anyway, what the study was that they put out is that the areas that we serve, kind of in the Midwest here, is low on capacity today, and that lack of capacity is going to continue to grow even more. And the reason why it's gonna has a potential lack of capacity growing even more is because you have coal plants that are just that rock solid steady are going to be shutting down. And so when you're relying on capacity, you have to rely on capacity, as I mentioned, when the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining. And that is now, with a lot of the studies, independent studies are showing that capacity is not where it needs to be. And if you look at California as an example, they have very much run into that over the last couple of years. What you've seen is lots of shutdowns of older coal plants, of older gas plants, and they're putting a lot of renewables onto the system. They also, as I understand it, do not allow coal to be imported into the system. And so what that has created is really the perfect storm where they have not had enough capacity. And so as the solar, specifically the solar, is really peeling off, in the afternoons as people are coming home, they simply do not have enough resources to provide energy to their customers. And we saw, we've seen major blackouts. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to be ahead of that in Colorado and with our system to make sure that we do not find ourselves in that situation.
I appreciate that. I would just maybe follow up with a quick comment that it still, to me, doesn't get to the core issue of this service territory and that the burden that the ratepayers are carrying in this service territory. And then also looking at it over time, if we increase the portfolio of renewables, do we just increase that burden? Do we just, there's nothing rolling off. You mentioned something rolling off. I don't see that happening for some time. So again, we could spend more time on this, but I'm concerned that a part of the state that is really poverty stricken is paying such high costs. And we're really looking, I think, to the company to help us find ways to reduce that burden.
Yeah, Emily, let me just make maybe one more point about, because I hear you talking about, adding these renewables and the cost of them. So as an example, the Renewable Advantage program, the 200 megawatt solar facility that we're contemplating, that was something that we brought to the PUC that was a cost savings mechanism for our customers. We didn't need that capacity, but what we found was that where the prices were for solar, we could contract for someone to build a solar facility, and we could buy that energy, and it would provide energy at a cheaper price than it would for us to run our PAGS plant. Because as you know, it's not just natural gas, the costs that are there with the PAGS plant, it's the natural gas costs and then all the operational costs. And so what we found was we could actually provide savings to customers by adding that renewable energy. And because it's a contract, we're not taking on this huge financial commitment. We're not putting the capital out to build that. We're just simply buying the contract energy. And so that's one opportunity moving forward of how we can continue to provide savings for our customers and not add cost.
But John, John, this is Kathy.
Yes.
I'm confused in the sense that, okay, it's less expensive to operate the solar and so forth because you're contracting, but you've already invested in the plant that's actual building and infrastructure. And so the customer is still paying for that when it's not being used. Am I saying that correctly?
That's correct. However, the energy that you're buying through the contract is overall cheaper than running the plant itself and incurring all of those additional costs associated with the plant. So while the fixed investment is there, the variable costs are being avoided.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Steve.
John, a question on the avoided costs. You obviously have two 200 megawatt plants at PAGS. Black Hills Energy owns one, and the subsidiary of Black Hills Corporation owns the other. And the PUC report of February 2021 indicated that there was a very large differential between the Black Hills Energy plant's operation time and the Black Hills Corporation's plant's energy time. And as we know, the Black Hills Corporation plant is substantially more expensive to operate, not in terms of cost, but in terms of what the customer pays. So is there any way to shift the operation of the Black Hills Corporation plant and put that usage on the Black Hills Energy plant? I think that would reduce costs.
Steve, I think I understand your question. I don't know that I agree that that's what the report suggested. I know that it did talk a little bit about the peaker plant, but I don't think it showed a variability between those two. So I can't directly address that question without going back to the report. But I'm happy to follow up with you on that.
The peaker plant is the third plant. I wasn't mentioning the peaker plant. I was talking about the difference between the two main base load plants that you have.
Yeah, no, I understood that, but I didn't understand. I don't think that's what the report said, not that I recall. So it's hard for me to comment on that.
Yeah, let me just take a stab at that. When you are dispatching, when you're looking at an overall portfolio that you need to serve from a customer perspective, right? We're looking at year ahead, we're looking at month ahead, we're looking at week ahead, we're looking at day ahead, hour ahead, and then we're looking at real time. And I say all those things because as you're looking at what your load is going to be, your customer's load, what you're doing is you're using your own resources and you're using the actual market. And what you're doing is you're stacking those resources in for least cost to your customers. That's pretty much a utility practice that there's no other way but to make sure you're doing least cost dispatching. We call it economic dispatch. So that is how those plants are actually dispatched. So each plant is going to have a little bit different cost perspective. We call it the heat rate. How expensive is it at a particular day or time? And again, that is how we dispatch those units. And any savings that we can get to our for our customers actually gets passed directly and right on to our customers.
This is John Hamrick. I'd like to make a comment a little bit. You know, if you step back and look at the whole situation, Black Hills is a for-profit business. A business opportunity was created by legislative action that resulted in the building of the PAGS plant. That was changes the direction from our legislature to the PUC to approve these types of projects. And so if we don't like the result of the projects in terms of cost, what that means, we've got to change legislators, essentially. You know, Black Hills is a highly regulated entity. And when you're highly regulated, you have to act in the political environment too. And I'm sure Black Hills wouldn't be making those points, but if you step back a little bit, the problem here is that the legislature created the ability for Black Hills to build these plants at our expense. And that's a business opportunity they saw, they took, but it was created by the legislature.
This is Andrea Stein, and I have a question. I'm not an expert, but I'm just wondering, the chart that's on the screen right now, the cumulative increases between January 2012 and July 2021, that doesn't really reflect the total of where you were to begin with in relationship to those other providers. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, yes, you are. And I'll move on to that slide once we're finished with the prior discussion, Andrea. Is there any other question about the kind of the reliability conversation that we were having prior to this? I did skip ahead that slide. So let's go ahead and move forward. This slide that Andrea was referring to, it is absolutely correct. And I want to just mimic what Vance said, which is nobody's hiding from the discussion that, you know, we made some substantial investments between 2008 and 2012. And those generation resources that we procured, which are the Pueblo Airport Generating Station, which were substantial investments that drove rates from 2008 to 2012, were because of two things. Number one, we were losing a contract that had provided us energy in the past. And so we kind of had this buy or build kind of conundrum that we were in. You had to determine how you were going to replace those resources, and the way those resources were replaced due to time and due to need were by building PAGs. And so that was a significant investment. But the point of this slide is not to hide that. The point of this slide is to say, since PAGs came on, since those costs have been entered into our rates, the stability that we have seen for the last 10 years has been in part because of the Pueblo Airport Generating Station. And it is a little bit of a credit to, you know, us being able to stay out of rate cases. We've been able to manage the business so that in the last 10 years, since those investments did come on, we have not seen substantial increases in the customer's overall bill. And that's been due to a couple of factors. One of those factors is the way that we've managed the business. The other factor has a little bit to do with the PUC, because when they did the phase 2 rate redesign, they did allocate some additional costs to some customers and gave some rate relief to residential customers. So, you know, I'm not going to say that they weren't part of it, but that's part of what the Public Utilities Commission does, is they're supposed to watch out for the consumer. And so they made a decision to shift some costs away from residential customers into other customers in our portfolio. And so this is simply to recognize that we made a substantial investment that is going to be necessary for many other providers in the state. Coal is being mandated out of the state of Colorado. And so there are going to be significant investments that have not yet been made. And we are the only one on this slide that I'm aware of that has completely made that transition.
Thank you.
John, I have a financial question. I don't know why, of all the things I've read, and there's lots of, and you know me, I've got my history with utilities. And so it's but it's never been on the financial side. So I'm the first one to say, well, for some reason, what always catches my eye is when, I don't know, I can't remember if it was the financing of PEGs or whatever, but you borrowed at an 18% interest rate from one subsidiary to another. And it seems like my initial reaction is that's robbing Peter to pay Paul. Was there not any other less expensive way to finance it? Because I think that comes back to the customer eventually, doesn't it?
Hey, Kathy, I like you, I'm not on the financial side of the business, so I can't comment about that. I'm not sure if there's somebody on my team that can jump in here.
I'll do my best shot. Kathy, I'm not aware of or knowledge to around an 18% financing rate. So I'm not sure specifically what you might be referring to. But as a company, we do look to our consolidated group, which benefits us in terms of our rating agency, much like a credit score for yourself or for myself, to get competitive debt rates. And so we manage and look to leverage as a consolidated group when seeking long-term debt to finance projects, and knowing that generally half of that we look to procure from our shareholders and the other half we look to procure from a long-term debt option. And we're consistently monitoring the market to find those opportunities to refinance debt at a lower rate, which is something we've been successful in this last year.
Thank you.
Yeah.
John, it's Ryan. Going back to that
Yes, Ryan, go
previous
ahead.
slide, what do those numbers look like on the commercial side?
So Ryan, actually, if I looked at all three of these, I didn't include them specifically because I didn't want to bore you guys with charts, but I'm happy to provide all three charts for both residential, commercial, and industrial. And overall, our customers had a very similar experience in all three categories.
Great. I think as the committee moves forward, having that information will be very helpful.
Yeah, I'm happy to get that for you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to note with this slide, there's a few opportunities that are coming up and few opportunities that we've already taken to partner with Canyon City and with all of our communities. One of those is our energy efficiency program. So these programs are designed and paid for by customers. So they are part of your rates. They are one of those 8 different charges that you see. So the energy efficiency program is designed to encourage people to save money or save energy, reduce their energy consumption. And by doing that, reduce our need to, build additional capacity or procure additional capacity. And so there's a net benefit to those programs. But more importantly, what it gives us an opportunity to do is to introduce some basic energy efficiency programs like the energy saving boxes that we gave out last year in Canyon City. We did a drive-through event where we partnered with a local agency. They were handing out food, and we offered energy savings kits to individuals as they came through that. We handed out, I think it was 300 boxes that day. But there's also some other, I would say, almost more effective opportunities inside those energy efficiency programs. And there's an opportunity to partner. We regularly engage with stakeholders to hear your feedback and to get some direction on things that you would like to see. And in fact, out of the last, it's called the demand side management, that's this energy efficiency program. During the last 3 years, we did hear a request to implement time of use rates, and that's something that will be coming in the next, I want to say year, but I can't tell you exactly what the timing is for it. But that is an opportunity that you'll see going forward in the new energy efficiency program. I also note that there are a couple of new features coming out in the most recent filing. We have an opportunity to do more than just energy efficiency weatherization. So as an example, when we're working with local counties, and let's see, it doesn't make sense to put insulation around the window if the window's broken. And so it'll allow us to do more non-energy related fixes to homes like that, to homes that qualify, things like replacing windows and a number of different things. But the point is that there's a community outreach, there's a stakeholder engagement piece, and it gives us an opportunity to design programs that are, specifically Canyon City would like to see. And so there's that opportunity. There's also an opportunity, we'll be filing our clean energy plan in March. Part of that means that we will be filing an energy resource plan. And so we've had a lot of conversation about these renewables and how and if they should be introduced and what the cost looks like. You're going to have an opportunity, you being the city of Canyon City, will have an opportunity to see, what we're considering and see how it could benefit customers. And you have a say in that. It's something that we can actively engage in. And then last but not least, community investment. And I know Vance, had mentioned the W.N. Clark repurposing. We have been working pretty diligently with the city to get that done. I am hopeful that we're going to be able to do that, but we partner in other ways as well. We offered $26,000 through Loaves and Fishes last year to provide funding for bill assistance for customers, as we were recovering from the height of the pandemic. And then right at the end of the year, we contributed $15,000 as a sponsor to Fremont County Economic Development to really sponsor their TechStart campus conference room. And the point wasn't just because we wanted our name on the room. The point was that FEDC does some really important work, and they were contributing, monthly to the operation, or they were sponsoring monthly that room. And so this $15,000 gift will free up, money for them to continue to do the very economic growth focused work that they should be doing, and they do. But those are just examples of things that, they're important, and they're important because they're priorities that we've heard in Canyon City.
John,
I want to talk a little bit. Yes, go ahead.
this energy efficiency program, is that like replacing windows, say like single pane old windows with newer thermal pane windows and such? Is there a rebate available to the customer?
I think that's Doug's voice that I'm hearing. Doug, we don't have window replacement as an energy efficiency measure in the program today. I can't tell you if that would be something that would be available through, that customization that I referred to, but I'd certainly be interested in having a little further conversation about it if it was valuable.
Thank you.
So I've included this slide because, we've talked a lot about the Public Utilities Commission and their role. And I just have taken this, it's in quotes, as you see, because I took this right off their website. The Public Utilities Commission regulates utilities in Colorado so that we have safe, reliable, and reasonably priced services that are consistent with the economic, environmental, and social values of our state. That's a whole bunch of words, but I think you all get the point there, which is that they are a regulatory body, and they are balancing several different things. The economic viability of the state, the environmental priorities for the state, and then the social values of our state. And so, every time that we bring something forward, whether it's be recovering system investments, a new tariff that we would like to introduce, like the time of use, low-income qualified programs, or simply recovering the gas cost from Storm Uri when we had that gas price event back in February of last year. All those things have to go in front of the PUC, and they're going to weigh in. And actually, the not just the commission staff, but the Colorado Energy Office and the Utility Consumer Advocate all intervene by right in our cases. In other words, their job is representing the interests of utility customers. Those three entities are charged primarily with making sure that the customer is sought after. But you do have an opportunity as a municipality. You have the opportunity to intervene on your own behalf, because you may have your own unique interests that you would like to have your voice heard on. And I guess the point of having this slide is I think you heard from Reg Rudolph as an example, who said, you know, you would benefit yourself to intervene at the state level on things related to Black Hills Energy's rates. And so I just bring it up because it's one of the things that you've heard. There are people that are there to serve your community and to protect the consumer, but you also do have an opportunity as a municipality to represent your own interests. Are there questions about that? Okay. Okay. So, you know, you've heard, yeah.
You submitted a bill for $24 million for the Uri storm. And it was, I think, close to half of your, I forget what fraction of your normal entire gas purchase that single event was. I think it was a very large fraction of it. I participated in that hearing with the administrative law judge, saying that I thought it was a bit high, particularly because when compared to Fort Collins, they were pretty aggressive about trying to get their customers to lower their consumption because costs were going to be very high. And they managed to achieve what was viewed as a 10% reduction. You guys came in late to that. And I just think that was a mistake on your part that unfortunately cost your customers some money. Because it was extraordinarily expensive gas, I understand that. It just that you might have been more proactive prior to that event, because everybody saw it coming at the utility scale. Not a lot of customers did.
Linda, were you going to
Okay.
comment on that?
Oh, Vance, I'm happy to. I guess I'd give you the first opportunity, and I have a couple of thoughts.
Yeah, I guess just a couple things, Steve. I appreciate your comments, but the 10% and some of that information that was thrown out, I think there's some affidavits and other things that some of the folks had to actually backtrack on what those actual savings were coming out of that particular utility. So there's a lot more information, Steve, than what you've shared. From a Black Hills Energy perspective here in Colorado, you know, it hasn't been settled yet, but as I recall, Melinda, I'm trying to think for the 2-year, was it a 5% or less impact?
Less than that.
Yeah, less than that. And so when you look at other utilities surrounding us, some of the bigger ones, I will not name any names, but if you go out and see some of the substantial increases, some north of 10%, some north of 20% and above on what those impacts are going to be. And I would actually flip this to say a storm Uri where market prices on gas were at all-time historical highs, or places where, you know, gas can be $2 to $3 depending on what market you're in, and they were trading at, you know, north of $500. And for us to be able to have our system in place to be able to plan for that and manage that and have relatively small impacts, I think really goes as a testament of how good of an operator we are, all the way from, you know, reliability to gas supply and minimizing costs to our customers. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, I just want to do a quick time check. It's right at 11 o'clock, and I do remember, Ryan, I think that is this meeting scheduled until 11? Am I okay to just try and wrap this up in the next few minutes?
We're actually scheduled till 12, but there's a couple of us that have meetings that we have to attend over in Florence, so we're gonna have to wrap it up before then, but please go ahead and finish up if you would.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, John. So just want to roll forward here then just a little bit. You all have heard proposals that sound pretty appealing on the surface, and they've talked about the opportunity to condemn our assets and sell it to another provider, or to municipalize service and to find a new wholesale energy provider. But I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about the risks and costs associated with both of those. And both of those studies, I guess, for lack of a better term, that you're going to see in the next 30 or 60 days, well, both of those things are free. The process certainly is not. Our assets are not for sale, and condemnation is a long and a lengthy process, which means, frankly, that resources are going to be diverted away from taxpayer priorities, and they're going to add cost and liability to the city. From a municipalization perspective, this is a multi-step process, and historically, the feasibility studies, especially if you look at what happened in Boulder as an example, have been inaccurate. And, a lot of times the municipality just ends up spending a lot of money in legal costs. Boulder alone spent nearly $30 million for almost a 10-year process with Xcel. And then they ultimately ended up in an agreement to partner going forward. And so that was just $30 million of taxpayer dollars that had been wasted on an effort that really, could have been avoided completely. And then I won't really spend a lot of time on community choice, other than to say that you heard from a former community choice advocate who has since rallied against that concept, and specifically because of the risks posed through large customers leaving, exit fees being increasing, and to make up for stranded costs, and really has evaporated savings in California. And it's not really an option today in Colorado, but it is being studied. So just want to recognize some of the risks that are associated with those other two proposals. So what would we propose going forward? Because the question that was posed to me is, are you guys going to come and give us some sort of offer or suggestion? And the answer is yes. And the reason that we're here today is to really talk a little bit about, what is the benefit of a franchise agreement? In all honesty, I had to go back to some subject matter experts, because when I've asked that question, I didn't have a really good answer. Because in my view, it's essentially an operating agreement. And on the surface, it is. It really minimizes misunderstandings between Black Hills Energy and the city on how our duties should be performed. It gives the city some oversight on how we make improvements in the public right of way, and necessitates that, we inconvenience your constituents as little as possible while we do that work. And it ensures the orderly development of utility infrastructure as the municipality expands. So, on the surface, it's an operating agreement. It also does provide some protection to the city. It has a hold harmless clause, which just, allows the city to be held harmless from any liability from injuries and damages stemming from construction or operation of our facilities, which is, kind of a big deal. I'm sure that, an attorney would probably agree. But also it assures a long-term partnership. It provides some visibility for the city and for us. And what I mean by that is, it really helps to support the economic delivery of service. So as you all know, we get our capital from two places. We borrow it, and we get shareholders or equity partners to provide us with the capital that we use to improve our system. One of the things that they look at is our franchise record, and they use that to determine what level of risk they see in the utility. And as you know, risk is a function of cost. And so the better our franchise record with our communities, the better it is for our customers. And so franchises actually do support economic delivery of service to the communities that we serve as well. And so, and I'm sorry, one last thing, the franchises also offer the opportunity for the city to generate revenue. As you all know, the city had a 3% franchise fee, and that franchise fee went away with the last election. And it's, you know, for better or worse, it's offered some relief to customers in a sense, but it's also, you know, $500,000 less that the city is being provided for, you know, really for use of the public right of way. But the city has that opportunity to make that decision, whether or not they want to include a revenue stream in their franchise. And I just want to point out that you know, I've heard that the way it's calculated, that it being based on total sales maybe hurts some folks unnecessarily. Well, there's other ways to do that. It can be a volumetric charge, so based on a percentage of use, or it could even be a flat fee if the city chose to do that. You could have, there's different ways to implement a franchise fee than was proposed in the first iteration of that proposal. And so, sorry, I don't know what happened here. All of a sudden, I've got something in front of my screen. There it goes. There we go. So, you know, what we would propose going forward is that we would revisit the franchise agreement and see if there's ways that we can improve that agreement. And that along with that we would propose to craft a memorandum of understanding between the city and Black Hills Energy that we can use to establish some clear goals, things that the city wants to identify as priorities, energy related priorities, to help us resolve the issues that the city sees, and to help to tailor some programs for Canyon City specifically. And in terms of partnering with the city, in terms of the PUC process, you know, we've been committed, as I think we've shown, whether it was storm Uri gas proceedings or even some legislation that was introduced last year. I know I reached out to the city a couple of times to say, hey, you might want to be aware of this thing that's going on at the legislature, because it could impact costs for customers. And so our commitment is to, you know, being more transparent. And we're not always going to be on the same page, but it is an opportunity for us to understand, you know, and to be honest and upfront about what's going on at the PUC and give you an opportunity to weigh in. And so our suggestion is that we have a memorandum of understanding separate of the franchise, and that we work together to craft that and really essentially make this a no-cost path forward. By reviewing the existing franchise and partnering on an MOU, we'll do the best that we can to bring that together, and then introduce both of those things to the voters in November of 22, before you go down this path of risk and cost and you know, trying to determine the legal path for separating from the utility. We would suggest that you ask the question again. Is this really what the consumers and your constituents, is that really what they meant when they said no to the franchise? Do they really want you to go down that path? And so I would commit to delivering a letter to the city before your next city council meeting or before this next energy committee meeting, so that you can consider that offer, and we'll formalize that offer to you. And then I would hope that, you know, that the city would take action in response to that letter.
John, I'm not.
And that's
sure
our presentation.
Sorry. John, I.
Go ahead, Emily.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I am.
You said an offer to the city, and I'm not clear what you were referencing.
Yeah, so our suggestion, our offer to the city is that I suggest that we re-engage with the city to try and negotiate the franchise a little further to see if there's ways that we can improve it, and that we work on a memorandum of understanding to identify and address community priorities, and that November of this year, so for the regular election, that we would take the franchise back to the voters along with that MOU and say, you know, would you consider a franchise renewal, or do you want us to go down this path of considering alternates for service?
I would just have a brief comment that, as you know, the primary concern is the cost to the customer in the service territory. And the franchise does not deal with that monthly cost. So it just feels a little bit like a disconnect there, but we'll look forward to your letter.
I would say
Yeah.
the,
Thank you.
we would welcome a letter from Black Hills. We'd be glad to take a look at it. And as I understand it, you're actually offering a little bit more than just working on the franchise, but it's contained on that page 16, the benefits of memorandum of understanding. What I believe the letter would cover.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Black Hills at this time? Yes, Brian.
Mr. Chair, I would suggest, if Black Hills could get it to the committee before our next meeting on the 24th. That way the committee can consider it before a city council meeting.
That would be great. Did you get that?
Yes, the 24th. I got it. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so I think that concludes our presentation of Black Hills. And what I'd like to do is, we do have Ryan and I do have another meeting. Oh, wow. Busy people here. But what I have on our agenda next is the letter of interest from Ortis, where they say that they are interested in working with us. And so I think to firm that up, to understand better what they're doing, I suggest that I write them an email and say, we'd like you to come in and present to the committee and see what I can arrange as far as that.
Yeah, because it was kind of a loose, I couldn't quite
Pretty
understand.
top level.
Yeah.
Pretty top
I
level.
need to drill down a little more.
Yeah, so we might be able to get them narrowed down a little bit. Does anyone else have a question or comment or?
Well, I want to thank Black Hills for doing this. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank
It
you,
took a lot of
guys.
your
Thank you.
time and a lot of work, and we appreciate it very much.
Thanks for sending the team or making them available to talk to us. We really do appreciate that.
And
Yeah.
councilmen and committee members, I would just like to reiterate as the person overall responsible for this business. We've heard, your concerns, on rates, many others in Pueblo and others. And that has clearly been a goal for us. And I think in some of the rate stability, I think that emphasizes that. And there's not a single employee, I don't think, that you could find within Black Hills Energy here in Colorado that doesn't have a very distinct focus on rates within our communities. That's what we talk about. That's, within our roadmap to success. And I wished I could fast forward several years, but when you look at rates within, energy companies, it's very lumpy, right? And as we move forward, I believe we are positioned very, very well for rate stability. And I do believe that other entities within Colorado are going to be having to do a lot of the same things we did over the last 10 years. And there's going to be upwards rate pressure for sure on that. So I guess I would just ask that you take really the long view of this and where rates are ultimately going across the state, as well as what we've been doing to maintain stability. And then what John said, great opportunity for folks to take active roles in proceedings at the PUC. They do regulate us, right? And it's pretty heavy regulation. So we can't, as a provider, we can't just go out and build generation. Matter of fact, it's got to be competitively bid, and we're only allowed, if we're the successful bidder, to bid on a portion of the biggest expense, which is generation. And then I firmly believe that for the community, it is a better path forward to look long term from a rates perspective, and how we're positioned, and the consequences of other entities who are going to be shutting coal plants down and doing things that we've done in the past, and what that means long term to other providers' rates. I just want to say thank you for the time. I know you didn't have to listen to us for an hour, but definitely appreciate it, and wish everybody a happy New Year. And as we started off, be safe. If somebody gets hurt, whether it's in a car accident or others, everything else all of a sudden becomes not as important. So safety's key in many areas. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Andrea, did you have something?
No, I was just looking forward to going to our voters. We're gonna have to explain to them why they should change their vote, why they should. We need a little help from you to, give us some ideas of what we can go to the voters. Because in the last election, voters didn't get a lot of information, real information. And so that might be helpful, because, who knows what the voters will do.
And that is something that could be the subject of this proposed MOU.
Yes.
Exactly. We need to have a little something in exchange for bringing out the vote, a positive vote, I would say. We need some kind of.
What
quo.
has changed?
Right,
What has changed, or how are we gonna change?
Right, well, what's exactly,
Yeah.
why should they vote yes this time? Exactly. I have a different.
It's noted. Thank you.
Does the committee think that,
Okay.
in effect, sorry, John, are you speaking?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to address some committee business separate from Black Hills, so I didn't want to cut you all
Okay.
off.
Yeah, no, I would thank you for that, Emily. If I want to just excuse the rest of the team that don't typically attend, I'll continue on. But thank you to my counterparts, my peers, for making the time today.
Thank you all.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In effect, by me moving from a CCEF representative on this committee to a city council representative, we were down one member on the committee. And I wondered, we don't have to make a decision today, of course, but I just wondered if the committee felt like we should either add in, and I think the way the resolution is worded, there's some flexibility, either add in another CCX, Kenyon City's Energy Future rep, and or another member of the community. So maybe this is just something to think about. We're dealing with some pretty weighty topics, and I am a little uncomfortable with the group shrinking in numbers. So I don't know.
But because of that, I'm also nervous about bringing in somebody that has no background as to what we've done
yeah.
for this year. So I
wouldn't
think
want
we
to do
need
that.
we need to think that through.
Yeah, I wouldn't want it to be someone
It's
who's
gotta
not
be,
had some involvement. So, but I really think going forward, we need to think what, and it's not just what we think, it's the voters. What's different, like you said, this time, what are they doing that they weren't doing before? How can we present that to the voters?
And along with that, what do we know? What have we found out? What have we learned that hasn't been shared adequately?
Right,
Perhaps.
it's like, I hate to go to the voters with nothing but stick.
well, and the thing is that we're at the point where we haven't heard back from CORE. We still have information to come from Guzman. And so, I mean, that's a lot of information that we will know that we didn't know before. And a lot of it is like you're saying, is how do you posture it? And, and dollars and cents, not only are we talking rates that we're paying right now, but from the city's perspective is where if we decide, hey, Black Hills still isn't the right people or the right company to continue with, where the hell is the financing? What is it? So we're a long way from even thinking about a vote yet, I think.
Yeah.
But I think we're getting close, another year we'll have an idea.
Yeah.
But it could, I hate to say
And if when they were talking about look long-term. I think that's what we've done from the get-go.
Try
We
it.
all know that this is not going to resolve itself in a year or two. And, you know, I've had people say, well, you know, we wrote that down, when is this all new start? It's like, oh, wait, you
Yeah.
know, nobody ever said it was going to be easy.
Well, you know,
Or cheap.
something they kind of said that kind of brought me back to it too, is that like, you know, Black Hills, if they could, the thing they may have no different than what we have known to this point is that if they are able to maintain where they're at,
That's
is
true,
the
yeah.
Excels of the world and the Colorado Springs of the world, are they gonna catch up
Yeah,
and stuff? And so then it becomes, okay, what else is out there? But
yeah.
I think you can't presume anything at this point.
No.
You've got to go through and see.
The process.
I
yeah.
think that Black Hills, as they pointed out, has already made a lot of improvements that some of these other companies that have presented have to make. And just like I read in the paper, that Excel's the one that provides for up north. They're already talking about a $587 million fire, whatever mitigation plans.
Oh,
So those are all gonna be things that are being passed along, I'm sure, to the consumer. And,
Well, yeah.
and
We need
like,
the same thing here.
Yeah,
What's
for
that?
sure.
You don't think we're at risk here?
oh, I didn't say that.
Oh, yeah.
No, I
No,
didn't
I
say
know.
that. But I
Yes.
mean,
Right.
PAGs and other things, the Black Hills has already experienced and caused our rates to go up tremendously. And we're forced to make those changes. Other companies still have to.
There's lots of different answers to that, but you provided the easiest way of us understanding it, but there are other,
Well, I'm a simple man.
well, so am I, trust me. So, yeah, I agree with you in that respect. So anyway, there's still a lot of unknowns.
Okay, so we are scheduled to meet again the 24th. That's our next meeting. So does anybody have anything else that we need to discuss here today? Because it's about time to get.
Guys get rolling?
Yes.
Okay.
Don't go over
I'll,
Reynolds, 'cause it's-
I asked a complex question about PAGs 1 and 2.
Yeah,
And
it went over.
I don't believe I received the good answers, so I'm going to address a letter to Vance Crocker, and I will share it with the committee. It's a why can't they lower costs from those two plants by running the one rather than the other?
Right.
The
Yeah.
PUC report said it.
Right.
The PUC report said they run the one plant at about 8%, the other plant at about 53%. The 53% plant is the pricey one.
Yeah,
That's purchased power. We pay a lot more for that than if they use the other plant more. And they're identical plants. This is not the peaker plant.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's a
yeah.
concrete
Yeah.
proposal to say how to lower rates, not just to Canyon City, but to everybody. So I'm gonna write that letter and I will share it with this committee.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
for
you.
doing that.
Yeah.
I just
That's
have to
great.
speak for myself that I was a
Copy.
little,
John.
sorry.
I'll copy everybody in.
Sure.
Yeah, and
I
including
was a
John.
little concerned that we didn't get a more comprehensive answer today, so I appreciate it.
yeah, I am too.
Well,
All right,
that,
Florence, what's in
we're
Florence?
adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Oh, my gosh.
Exactly.
See you, John.
What they're trying to do is try